Hello everyone, welcome to the second session of the subject Managerial Skills Development. So, as you all already know and as you all have been already communicated, this session is the second session of the subject Managerial Skills Development offered to you in your second year first semester as a compulsory subject. So this is a 2 credit subject of your Bachelor of Business Management Human Resource Honours degree. And as y'all are planning to become managers of private or public sector organizations, or probably entrepreneurs or owners of organizations, it is very much important that you develop your skills to fit those roles in addition to becoming thorough with the knowledge. And that is why this subject has been introduced into the curriculum. So, I am Dr. Prabhashini Vijayavantha. I am a senior lecturer attached to the Department of Human Resource Management of the Faculty of Commerce and Management Studies, University of Kelaniya. And today I am going to discuss with you about managerial skills in depth. Last week, during the module introduction lecture, I provided you with an overall understanding or a helicopter view of the subject managerial skills development. So today I am going to do the first lesson, which is providing an introduction to managerial skills. So under this lesson, we will discuss who is a manager. I am sure you all have learned who is a manager in your first year, first semester subject, Principles of Management. And based on that, now you all know what is management, what are the functions of management, and who is a manager. And these managers need managerial skills to perform as managers. So now I am going to provide an introduction to that. So before we go ahead, we can discuss a few examples of managerial skills. What are they? The first one could be performance management. Nowadays, you all may have realized that Sri Lanka is facing a very serious problem because Sri Lanka has not delivered the expected level of performance, the outcome, or the productivity. So this scenario is applicable to every organization and entity operating in Sri Lanka. So this performance management is very important for organizations to manage the performance of the employees working in organizations. So the managers should know how we can manage the performance of the employees, how we can design and implement a proper performance management system for our organizations. Then we can use the vision of the organization and the mission of the organization, and the senior management or the chairman and the board of directors of an organization should determine based on the vision and mission of the organization what is the overall objective and goals of the organization going to be, and these overall goals and objectives will be very common for the organizations, all divisions, and based on that we should develop a strategy for the overall organization called the corporate level strategy or the business strategy. Then, based on these strategies, we have to develop the departmental and divisional level goals and objectives. For that, the senior management or the chairman and the board of directors have to get the involvement of the functional heads as well. So based on that, we develop the strategies for the different functions or departments of the organization. And then for each department, we have to establish separate goals and objectives. So based on the separate goals and objectives that we establish, then next comes the goals and objectives assigned for each individual employee in the organization. So based on that, they may be given with the KPIs or key performance indicators. Then the employees would know what are the expectations from them. So then the employees would use these expectations from them and then perform accordingly. Then the organization has to implement a system to evaluate the performance of the employees, maybe either annually or biannually. And the organization has to also decide who will be doing the performance evaluation. So this performance evaluation will be done by either the immediate supervisor. Along with that, there may be several other parties involved in the performance evaluation based on the type of people who are involved in the performance management task. So then this based on the evaluation, the management can decide to provide the employee with the feedback, and then the employee can be directed to relevant trainings based on this. So this is how the overall strategic level activities of the organizations can be linked with the individual employee level performance. You will learn in depth about developing the vision and mission of the organization and the overall goals and objectives for the organization, and finally the strategies for the organization in your subject strategic management, which you will learn in your third year. And subsequently, you will learn also about how performance management function can be linked with strategic planning, and then how performance management can be linked with rewards management, where a company can implement a performance-based reward system, and next, how a company can link performance management with training in your subjects preventive HRM, then your subject strategic HRM, and your subjects HRD in the years to come. So that is an in-detail discussion about performance management. Next, it is a very important skill that one has to develop, which is personal resilience. So today I invite you as a homework, and I will include this as a quiz related to the today's lesson as well, to read more about developing resilience. So when it comes to personal resilience, it refers to the resilience that we develop as separate individuals. So as separate individuals, it is very important that we become resilient to the external situations and circumstances. That indicates how much pressure we develop and how much pressure we handle, and how you face with that kind of pressure. So then it is very much important to develop personal resilience, especially during a situation like what we are facing at the moment in Sri Lanka, because that guides you as to how you should handle the situation in the country and manage your personal work. So I suggest you to read further about developing personal resilience. Thirdly, we will discuss about objective setting. So, as individuals and as organizations or as departments, all of these entities need to have their own objectives. These objectives has to be set methodically. These objectives should adopt the SMART characteristics, which means they should be specific, measurable, attainable, time-bound, and realistic. So it's very much important that we set objectives for our organizations, our departments, as well as our individual employees. So when it comes to organizations, the organizations will set the objectives for the employees. Apart from being an employee in an organization, all of us have our own personal life. So therefore, it's very much important that you develop your own personal objectives and see how you are progressing well with those objectives. So therefore, it's very important that you develop your own life goals and objectives. I have explained about this in the lesson self-management, which I have done as a real-time lecture regarding how you can develop your own personal life goals and objectives related to different aspects of life. And then you need to monitor your progress regarding the goal achievement. Next comes the coaching skills. So here comes the coaching skill. So we all know that when it comes to training, earlier we only had basic training. But now we have elaborated aspects related to training such as mentoring, coaching, counseling, etc. etc. So then when it comes to this mentoring, coaching, counseling, etc., it's very important that a person who identifies himself or herself as a coach would know how to coach the employees or the others. So then that is very much important. Next comes the presentation skills. So presentation skills is a very important skill which you already possess and which you already need to develop and which you need to have in your future as well as one you become employees of organizations. Also, you may have to deliver presentations to others. So it's very much important that you learn and develop your presentation skills. So I hope you all have completed the 2 courses in the first year and your second year related to DELT, where you have learned about presentation skills. So then, as you have learned presentation skills, it's very much important that you practice how to do an introduction to a presentation, how to deliver the body of the presentation, and finally, how to deliver the conclusion of your presentation, and finally, how to handle the questions and answers of a presentation, and also how to prepare the visual aids of a presentation. Next comes the motivation skills. So as you become managers and as you work in teams, we all need to be motivated. But we all know that the levels of motivation of different employees is different, and it varies according to different stages. So therefore, it depends on the level of the motivation skills that individuals have. So if your team members or peers do not have sufficient motivation, a sufficient level of motivation, as a team member, you should be able to improve their level of motivation and encourage them to be motivated and work accordingly. And it is very much important as managers to motivate your employees during the present day context. And furthermore, it is very much important that we develop our own levels of motivation as individuals and thereby become self-motivated individuals. And talking about managing conflict. So we all would know, we all have observed that there are a lot of conflicts these days between the government and the general public and between people. You may see quite a number of conflicts in the government, in the petrol sheds and any other public places where people gather. So it's very much important as managers to learn how to manage or handle a conflict. So the management has to decide how you are going to manage the conflict, how you are going to manage the conflict which may have occurred probably within the employees. So we all know that conflicts could occur at micro level and the macro level. There could be conflicts within individuals, within a person's own self, where I am in a conflict whether to do this or not, which would be a very personal dilemma. Then I may get into a conflict with another person, which is the second level of conflict, which is called interpersonal conflict. Then comes the third level where we are working in one team and within that team we get into a conflict which is called intra-team conflict. Then there could be two teams. Then within those two teams we get into a conflict which is called inter-team conflict. So then inter-team conflict is a conflict between two teams. Like that, there could be intra-organizational conflict within an organization and a conflict between two rival organizations, which is called inter-organizational conflict. And there could be a conflict within people in one country called an intra-country conflict. And there could be a conflict between two countries like Ukraine and Russia, which is an inter-country conflict, which we may refer to as a war. Then comes the stakeholder management activity. So you all again may have learned about stakeholders for principles of management, where you learned about the business environment, and secondly about the business in marketing environment under the subject marketing, and thirdly under strategic management. So here you will learn how to manage the stakeholders. So you should know first who are stakeholders. A stakeholder is a person who has a stake over the organization, and then the stakeholders will have a stake over the organization either directly or indirectly. So the stakeholders include shareholders, employees, customers, the trade unions, media, the special interest groups towards the organization, then the general public, the government, the suppliers. Like that, there are different parties, and then these groups may have conflicting demands and interests. So the managers should know how to balance their requirements and the demands. And also you as students should understand that stakeholders are not the same as shareholders. Stakeholders are a broader group where shareholders are one part within that. So shareholders are only one single group of stakeholders. And then comes delegation skills. So earlier those days there were very small organizations and managers tend to do all the work by themselves. But now they have realized that it is not practically possible as the business activities expand or organizations expand to come up with different practices of delegation. So then the next thing comes is is a delegation is where the managers delegate the work to the subordinates. So it is very much seen in Sri Lankan organizations that the managers and the employees do not know how to delegate the work. So this delegation has to be done in a very methodical manner so that the employees at the top, the superiors should know what kind of work can be delegated and how can they be delegated. So once we delegate the work, we have to delegate the decision-making authority along with that. So this decision-making authority has to be delegated to the subordinates according to the decision-making authority should be delegated to the subordinates according to the hierarchy of the organization. And also when you delegate the work, we all know that along with that we delegate the responsibility as well. But we do not delegate the accountability. So the senior managers do have the accountability. And then comes the difficult conversations. So we all know that in organizations when we work and even in your as students as you work, you may have realized that you encounter difficult conversations. So there could be situations where you have to engage in difficult conversations where it would be difficult to communicate that message to the other party because we are sure and aware that the the decision of the response of the other party would be negative. So there, in this situation, it could be where we are talking about eliminating or taking out some responsibility from the employees to another party, or maybe reducing allowance or an overtime payment, something like that. So then these employees will not uh, the employees will not be happy to accept that kind of a conversation. So in that case, these employees may be willing to accept that message if we do that communication in a positive manner. And then comes the feedback skills. So it's very much important that we develop the feedback skills, or develop the level of feedback, provide the feedback to the other employees in a methodical manner. So when we provide feedback to the others, it is no point in giving it in a negative manner, because then the employees will be not happy, and the employees will not be reluctant. The employees will not be happy to get that feedback. So therefore, it's important that we provide this feedback according to a manner where the employee can develop himself or herself. Next, another very important thing is conducting meetings. You all will learn about conducting meetings effectively based on in the lecture communication skills. So there you will learn how you lead meetings. So it's very much important that you develop your skills related to leading meetings. So then when it comes to leading meetings, we should know how to prepare an agenda for a meeting, and then how to develop the agenda and the minutes and share the minutes prior to the meeting, and also how you would work along with a team in conducting the meeting and arriving at a consensus. So then it is very important that we arrive at a conclusion regarding leading the meeting. And then finally, you should be aware of yourself. That's called self-awareness. So as individuals, we should be aware of ourselves. For that purpose, it's important that you develop your own SWOT and vision, mission, goals, objectives, and a timeline related to achieving those goals and objectives. And thereafter, the strategies to achieve those goals and objectives, and also your level of strengths, weaknesses to face these objectives. Then comes the communication skills. So these communication skills are skills which are required by all of us as a very important skill. That is why we have included the subject communication for HRM professionals in your second semester as well as an optional subject. So when it comes to communication, it includes reading, writing, speaking, and also listening and non-verbal communication skills. So we have to develop the communication skills that we provide for the employee, that we should develop the communication skills that we to deal with the employees properly. And then comes rapport building. This area of rapport building is a very important area, and I will explain to you further about developing a rapport or building a rapport or with others, which is also called relationship building in a separate lesson called social and networking skills. So, talking further about our discussion regarding managerial skills, as I mentioned in the previous slide, there are different types of skills that managers need to focus on. So, as future managers, all of you, the students, have the potential to be one of the best there ever was at your chosen craft or skill. Then you won't do what it takes to get there. So, first, the most important thing, as mentioned by Robin Sharma. I hope you all have heard of Robin Sharma. If you have already heard, that's very good. But if you have not heard about him, kindly search the Google, then you will be able to find that he is a famous inspirational guru and a motivational speaker. So when it comes to Robin Sharma, he says that if you yourselves don't believe that you have the potential. That means you have to have self-belief. So you have to have the self-belief that you have the potential to be one of the best there ever was. So you have to believe that you have the potential or the capacity to be one of the best people there ever had been in your chosen craft or skill. So now when it comes to most of you, your chosen craft or skill or area is to be an HR manager. So then you have to believe that you have the potential to be one of the best there ever had been. And then you won't do what it takes to get there if you don't have that self-belief. So it's very much important that you develop self-belief about yourself. Then definitely you will do all what is necessary to get there or achieve that particular level. So with that, we'll move on to what we are planning to cover in this session. So this is the session outline. So we will begin with by discussing about what are managerial skills. Then, so I will explain to you the definition of managerial skills and further elaborate that definition using a few examples. I have already used and explained examples of managerial skills under slide number 2 as well. Then we will discuss about the critical role or the most important role of managerial skills. So, the critical role of managerial skills is that it is a very important skill and it plays a very crucial role. And then we will move on to define the characteristics of managerial skills. So we will define what are the characteristics or features of managerial skills. So there we will define what are the key characteristics and further discuss about essential or the most important managerial skills that one has to develop. Furthermore, under this session, we will discuss about improving managerial skills. So, as I mentioned previously, as future managers, you need to develop, enhance, or improve your managerial skills. So, we will discuss what are the methods, strategies, or approaches that we can use to improve our managerial skills. Next, why should you learn managerial skills? So, as I had been mentioning repeatedly, we have included this particular subject of managerial skills development in your undergraduate curriculum with a purpose. So it's very important that you also learn the reason, the purpose, or the rationale behind that. Therefore, we will discuss why the reason that you should learn managerial skills in the classroom so that you will learn the importance of them for your future. Once you learn and improve your managerial skills and then go to the job market and start working, you will be able to become a very competent manager. So, as graduates, in most cases, you all are recruited as management trainees and then you all are absorbed into assistant manager or manager positions. In that case, the organizations expect universities to produce very competent graduates so they ultimately become competent managers. So it's very important to develop competent managers for the job market. So therefore, we will discuss the importance of competent managers so that you will learn how you can become a competent manager and how much you will be valued in the job market. And finally, we will discuss an approach to skill development. Now that we have to develop skills, it's very important that we discuss about an approach for skill development. So what is the most suitable approach for skill development? We will discuss about that as well. So then let's start our discussion step by step. So we'll begin by discussing the critical role of managerial skills. So now we are going to discuss about managerial skills. Why are we discussing about managerial skills? Because of the critical role played by them in organizations. For what? For performance. Managerial skills are a set of specific skills which we expect to be manifested by the managers or the employees who have the potential to become managers in the future. So then, these managerial skills lead to performance. Whose performance? The performance of the individual employee who has managerial skills. So basically, when we have good managerial skills, we can increase our performance. So there is a positive impact of managerial skills on the performance of that particular employee. Similarly, this will lead to increased team performance or departmental performance. And finally, the increased organizational performance. So thereby managerial skills development of employees contributes to the ultimate increase of overall organizational performance. However, this has to be backed by several things. One such thing is human relationships. Those are the relationships that people have with each other. So the human relationships are the relationships that we maintain with each other. And we discuss about these human relationships in depth or detail under the topic networking and social skills. So we all know that nowadays developing people networks or human networks with people is of immense importance. So therefore, it's very important that we develop managerial skills as well as human relationships to demonstrate increased performance. In addition, as we all know, we all are now depending on the technology for everything. So it's very important that we depend on technology for everything. So therefore, we need to have the advanced technology access plus the managerial skills. Within that, we need to develop the skill to handle technology. And it's not useful if we have the skills to handle technology and if the organization does not provide the advanced technology for the organization, for the employees in the organization to work and use. So therefore, then the technology related managerial skills of employees will go in vain. Therefore, the organization should have the latest technology in place. At the same time, there is no point in having the latest technology in place in the organization if the employees do not have the necessary skills to use the technology. So therefore, both are very much important. Next, change. Change is a very tricky and a very difficult and a very challenging thing. We all know that there is always change everywhere. There is something changing at any moment. So, therefore, we should be able to adapt or adjust to change and change ourselves. Resistance to change is a very serious problem, especially when it comes to Sri Lankan organizations. So, therefore, we need to focus on change management as well, because the organizations should know how to embrace change. If the organizations do not embrace change, they will be automatically destroyed. That is what happened to companies like Nokia, Kodak, etc. So therefore, it's very important to embrace change. But we cannot take all the changes. We have to decide what changes are suitable for us and only accept them, and then adjust the organization and the employees accordingly. Because of the importance of this change factor, there is a separate subject in your final year called change management, where you can learn further or in depth about handling change. Now that we are discussing extensively about managerial skills or management skills, let's see exactly what management skills are or managerial skills are. In simple, managerial skills are the skills required by managers to manage an organization. So, however, when we look in depth about managerial skills, we could observe that the managerial skills can be defined as the skills needed to manage one's own life as well as the relationships with others. What does this mean? Managerial skills refers to the skills or the competencies such as communication skills, conflict management and negotiation skills, stress management skills, problem solving skills, decision making skills, etc., which are needed or required or we should possess. For what purpose? One, to manage one's own life. We need managerial skills to manage our own life. So it's very important that we manage our own life first before we try to go and manage the other people and their lives. One of the major problems in today's organizations and in leadership is that the leaders or the managers try to manage the other employees, especially the subordinates, without managing their own lives. As a result, their own lives become disorganized and messy, while the subordinates' lives also fall into that disaster. So therefore, the skills are required to manage our own life. So these are the skills which we are important at the individual level, as well as to manage or handle the relationships with other people. Here, the other people could be our family members, parents, siblings, spouse, children, servants, our employees at home, like drivers, etc., or else our neighbors, our relatives, then our uh, work colleagues, superiors, subordinates, or any other people whom we deal with. So remember, whatever we do with other people requires us to develop a relationship with them. So that is why human relationships are very much important. So, these managerial skills form the vehicle by which management strategy, management practice, tools and techniques, personality attributes, and style work to produce effective outcomes in organizations. So, managerial skills contribute to produce or generate effective outcomes such as increased profits, increased reputation, increased goodwill, maybe running good advertisement campaigns, etc. So, managerial skills contribute to produce effective outcomes for organizations. How? By acting as a vehicle. So what does a vehicle do? They transport or move our people or goods from one place to another. Similarly, managerial skills form or act as the vehicle by which management strategy of the organization, which has been developed by the senior management of the organization, and how the company practices management, and then the tools and techniques that we use, such as maybe 5S, Kaizen, Kanban, things like that. Personality attributes like positive thinking, getting angry, all that, and style work. So all these together contribute to produce effective outcomes. Thus, managerial skills or the skills possessed by the employees, which helps them to manage their own life as well as the relationships with others, can be identified as the building blocks upon which effective management in organizations rest upon. Now that we had been discussing about managerial skills, let's look at one of the models of essential management skills. Okay, so at the beginning also we discussed about a few management or managerial skills. And also in the previous slide, when I was explaining or rather defining what are managerial skills, I told you that managerial skills are the skills required by a person to manage his or her own self as well as the relationships with others. So there are different models presented by different scholars on managerial skills or management skills. So out of them, I am presenting and discussing about one, which is a model of the essential management skills. So, under this model of essential management skills, we are dividing it into three categories. One is personal, interpersonal, and the other one is group. So, the personal management skills are the skills which are very much important and very useful to develop our own self. So, out of them, the first category is developing self-awareness. What do you mean by developing self-awareness? That is a personal or an individual level skill that we should have. Under that, we should develop awareness or knowledge about ourselves. What do we need to do here? We need to know when about our physical body. When can I get up in the morning? If I get up at this time, what problems I will face? How much water do I need to drink? What type of food are healthy for me? What things make me happy? What things make me stressed? What are my strengths? And how can I capitalize on them? What are the threats coming from the outside towards me? What are my weaknesses? Like that, we have to develop self-awareness about ourselves. Next comes one of the very important and very useful areas for ourselves, which is managing stress. That is stress management. Of course, you all will learn about managing stress in several workshops, plus in under the subject organizational behavior, maybe conflict management, maybe counseling, everything. So then it's very much important to manage stress. So under managing stress, we know that stress is something inevitable and we cannot overcome that. So, we cannot avoid that. So we should learn how to manage stress in a proper way. We know that stress in one hand is important to a certain degree. So having some amount of stress is beneficial for us because that amount of stress will motivate us to work with enthusiasm. But when the stress goes beyond the optimal limit, it becomes distress. So the good part of stress is called eustress and the bad part of stress is called distress. So we need to know how to manage our stress level at the optimal level. Then solving problems creatively. How can you solve our problems? We can solve our problems creatively. We all know that in our life we have to face several problems in our personal life, in our work life, in our organizations, everywhere. So again, similarly like stress, problems are inevitable, which means we cannot stop or avoid. Then what can we do with these problems? We have to solve them. We should know how we can solve these problems. There are different ways that we can solve problems. You may have learned about problem solving and decision making in your first year Principles of Management subject as well. And then one problem may have several solutions. And then out of them, we have to see what is the most creative method of solving problems and solve problems according to that. The next is interpersonal skills. So then interpersonal skills are skills which are useful for us or beneficial for us in working with other people. It could be two or more people. Here, however, we interact with them individually. So under this, the first skill that we should discuss is managing conflict. So we should know how to manage conflict. Conflict management refers to Managing conflicts with other people. Here we all know that there are conflicts. You all will learn further about conflicts in the third year under the subject organizational behavior, and also there is a separate optional subject called conflict management and negotiation skills. So under that you will learn it. So, when it comes to conflict, again there are different types of conflicts like intrapersonal conflict, interpersonal conflict, intergroup or inter-team conflict, and intra-team conflict. So, what do you mean by intra and inter? There is a difference. Intra means within, inter means between. So then intrapersonal conflicts refers to the conflicts within the person. That is, I am in a conflict whether I should do this or that. Sometimes my mind asks me to do that. At other times it asks me not to do that. So then that is an intrapersonal or within person conflict for me. Then, if I am in conflict with another individual or a person, it's an interpersonal conflict, that is between two people. Then comes the next category, which is intra-group. There is one particular group. Let's say your assignment group 1. Then there is a conflict within your assignment group 1. That is a conflict within your group. So it's an intra-group conflict. Then if there is conflict between two groups, let's say between the group Paru and group Pintaru, that is a conflict between two groups. So it's called an intergroup conflict. So all these conflicts are very common and unavoidable. But we need to know again how to manage them. Why? Because if we don't know how to manage them, they will create further problems for the organizations. And next is motivating employees. It's very important that when we are working in an organization that we motivate the employees. We have to motivate our superiors, our peers, and our subordinates. So therefore, when there are disappointments, sadnesses, and frustrations, it's very important that we motivate our employees. And also at the same time, it's very important that you do not need anybody else to motivate you, because you are motivated by yourself. So therefore, always try in your career or your life to become a self-motivated individual, so that you don't have to wait till others motivate you. Then comes communication. Communication is a very important skill that you need to develop in your life. That is why we have a separate subject in our semester 2 called Communication for Human Resource Management as an optional subject. So this communication is very important. We observe that there are a lot of problems that occur due to lack of communication. So communication can be with words or without using words. Communication that happens with words is called verbal communication. And communication that happens without words is called non-verbal communication. Non-verbal communication includes body language, gestures, postures, pictures, signals, symbols, signs, etc. For an example, road signs. Then verbal communication can be divided into two main categories again, as written communication and oral communication. So written communication refers to what we write and send or pass, such as letters, emails, newspaper articles, press notices, gazettes, etc. Then verbal oral communication refers to speeches, presentations, normal spoken language, etc. So you may have learned about all these things in your English language courses in your first year as well as in this semester. However, we will learn about all these in detail in your second year semester 2 under the subject communication. Then gain power and influence. Power is a very important skill. Power is a very important variable. So when you get into a position, along with that you get the authority to do certain work or execute certain activities. In doing so, you gain the power also along with that. And when you gain power, you have the ability to influence other people. So when you have power, you have to be very careful because otherwise you may get misguided. Right? So that is why we say when it comes to politicians also that බලය තියනකොට මොලේ නෑ, මොලේ තියනකොට බලය නෑ. Which means when they get power, they lose brains. So when you get power or when you get into powerful positions, you have to use your brain very, very carefully. And then you have to influence the other people carefully. So these are the skills related to the interpersonal segment. Then let's move on to the group segment. So these are the management skills that you need to work in a group. So one, empowering and delegating. What are the skills required to empower other people? When you're working in a team or a group which has a large number of members, it's very difficult to do all the work by the leader himself. So the leader has to delegate the work among the subordinates. In that case, leader has to do it very carefully. Leader cannot delegate all the difficult work and then leader cannot just wipe the hands and wait. The leader has to delegate all the work in a proper manner by identifying an equal distribution of work and also by identifying the competencies of people. And at the same time, the leaders have to empower others to do those work. Whatever you do, you remember that when you empower or delegate, you pass the authority to the other person to execute the tasks. And at the same time, you have to communicate for which tasks he or she will be responsible. And furthermore, we also should know that the leader should be ultimately accountable. Why? Because even though the responsibility can be delegated, accountability cannot be delegated. Next comes leading positive change. As I told earlier, change is inevitable. That is why most of the tuk-tuks have this phrase called වෙනස් වන ලෝකයේ නොවෙනස් වන එකම දේ වෙනස් වීම පමණයි. So therefore, we have to change towards our good or benefit. Therefore, we have to lead positive changes. We have to lead our organizations positively. And then comes building effective teams. we have to build effective teams. In an organization, we do not work as individuals or in isolation. So in that case, we work either in groups or teams. If you take the HR department of an organization, it could be also identified as a team. So then we have to build the team properly so that everybody works together in order to achieve the common objective without running their own single agendas. And also the team has to contribute to the achievement of the ultimate goal of the team as well as now that we are discussing about management skills, let's now look at their characteristics. So, what are the characteristics of management skills? Let's look at them one by one. The first one is management skills are behavioral, which means management skills are associated with the behavior of people. Our behavior or the human behavior is a demonstration or a manifestation of our management skills. So, our personality attributes, characteristics within our personality are not our skills. So the attributes within our personality, whether I am aggressive, whether I am forward, whether I am strong, these are my personality attributes. You will learn in detail about personality under this lecture series. So then, under personality, these skills are not coming under personality attributes. So these personality attributes are not considered as managerial skills or our stylistic tendencies. Certain tendencies or our nature of doing work like the style, they are also not management skills. Then consist of identifiable sets of actions that individuals perform and that lead to certain outcomes. Why do we identify management skills as behavioral? Because they consist or include an identifiable set of actions. They include of a set of identifiable actions. Actions that could be identified. So that through our behavior, these actions could be identified. And then when these individuals perform these actions or behaviors, they lead to certain outcomes. Like when we manage stress, we will be able to live without getting pressurized or depressed. And management skills can be observed or seen by the other people through our behavior. So, our management skills are simply manifested through our behavior. How, even though management skills are not a personality attribute, people with different styles of life and personalities, we all know that different people have different types of personalities. So based on their personality and their style of life, people may apply these management skills differently. They will apply those skills in a different manner. There are nevertheless a core set of observable attributes in effective skill performance. And however, there is a central set of attributes or features which could be easily observed. How? In effective skill performance, when we perform the skills effectively. So therefore, a core set of observable features or characteristics are there in effective skill performances, irrespective of the differences in our personalities. So it's common across a range of individual personalities. Next, we will look at the second characteristic of management skills, which is management skills are controllable. So then, when we perform our management skills, it is a part of our behavior that we all know because we discussed earlier that management skills are behavioral. So, as management skills are controllable, it means that the person who is performing the skill can control it by himself or herself. Performance of these behaviors like managing stress, problem solving, delegating work, all these things is under the control of the individual person or the individual student or the individual employee. So therefore, we should be able to either improve or reduce our skill. Skills can be consciously demonstrated, practiced, improved or restrained by individuals themselves. Therefore, these skills can be consciously or carefully demonstrated or shown and then practiced. We can practice regularly about managing stress and or managing conflicts or improve our communications through things like presentation skills, etc. And then thereby through practice we can improve ourselves. That is why we say in presentation skills also, practice, 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 and practice makes you perfect. Or restrained by the individuals themselves. Or we can just stay without manifesting these skills. It is up to us to decide. So it's within our control and not something beyond our control. So next, we will look at the third characteristic of management skills. What is that? Management skills are developable. It's very, very important for all of us to learn this. Management skills can be developed. So we all know that all of us have some amount of management skills. However, they can be developed. Individuals can improve their competency in skill performance through practice and feedback. Individual employees or individual people can improve or enhance or develop their competencies, that is knowledge, skills, attitudes in performing a particular skill, that is let's say, empowering and delegating. How? Through practice. By repeatedly practicing to do the same thing, as we discussed earlier. And also, very importantly, by getting feedback. We always should try to get feedback from others. It's very useful and valuable for our lives. Individuals can progress from less competency to more competency in management skills. Individual employees or any individual can gradually or slowly progress, improve from a level of low competencies or less competency to more competencies. That is a high amount of competencies in management skills. How? By expanding their knowledge about that competency, expanding their skills through practice and feedback, and by developing a positive attitude about this through the next characteristic of management skills is that management skills are interrelated and overlapping. What do we mean by this? When it comes to management skills, they are interrelated. That means if we take two skills, they are related to each other. If we take the communication skills and the ability to work in a team, or the team working skills, we could clearly understand that a good communicator will be able to communicate well and thereby work in a team very easily and very successfully because of their communication skills, which means the strong communication skills helps this person to perform his ability to work in teams really well. At the same time, if we take the team working skills, a person who is willing to work with others, who has strong interpersonal skills, and who is capable of talking and working with each other, will communicate really well with those members than an individualistic person who is not willing to speak and work together with others. And as a result, we can say that the management skills are overlapping. That means one overlaps the other. That is, if we take again communication skills and problem solving skills and decision making skills together, we could see that one could be able to make decisions really well if he or she has good problem solving skills and analytical thinking. In addition, the person will be able to collect all the necessary information, discuss with people and get their opinions and solve the problem really well if they have good communication skills. So communication skills, problem solving skills and decision making skills are overlapping. So let's discuss about this further. Skills are not simplistic, repetitive behaviors, but they are integrated sets of complex responses. If we take skills, skills are not simple behaviors. If I am showing or demonstrating some type of a skill, it's not a simple thing. Skills are not simple or simplistic, repetitive behaviors. We do not repeat our behaviors related to a particular skill simply. It occurs as a result of an integrated set of complex responses. So skills are integrated or combined. So that means, that's what I said, communication skills, decision-making skills, and problem-solving skills are integrated or a combined set of complicated responses to a particular requirement. So therefore, effective managers must rely on combination of skills to achieve desired results. So in organizations, the main focus of managers is to achieve the expected results or the desired results or the expected type of performance. So to achieve these desired results, the managers who are effective or working towards the goals and objectives must rely or depend on a combination of skills, which means they should know how to combine different skills together and put them into use, and then only their behaviors will produce the desired results. Similarly, they should encourage their subordinates also to do the same thing. In relation to the interrelated nature or the overlapping nature of the management skills, I am giving you this quick quiz. So this quick quiz question asks you to give examples of overlapping skills. So earlier we discussed in the previous slide that management skills are overlapping and interrelated. I explained this by using one example, and here I am asking you to give or think about more examples. So this is a brainstorming exercise, and I kindly request you to engage in this. Here I have given another example in addition to what I have mentioned in the previous slide. So, to effectively motivate others, skills such as supportive communication, influence, empowerment, and self-awareness may be required. So, as I told you earlier, one of the major skills that you need to develop as management undergraduates is the ability to motivate yourselves and motivate others. It is very important that you behave as a motivated person. A motivated person is identified as a self-motivated individual, and it is a very rare nature of a person, and it is one of your strengths if you are a self-motivated individual. And of course, you can always mention it in your SWOT analysis or in your CV. And then, as many people are not self-motivated like you, and even if they are motivated, as they might get demotivated with certain incidents and occurrences, it's important that we always motivate or encourage each other to perform well. So, when we are motivating others, we need to effectively motivate them. What do you mean by effectively motivating others? It refers to motivating others in such a manner that they are able to achieve the expected levels of performance and produce the expected levels of outcomes. So, to effectively motivate others, you need a set of other skills. What are they? They are the interrelated skills to the motivating ability, and we can identify them as overlapping. To effectively motivate others, skills such as supportive communication may be required. There are several types of skills which we would need to effectively motivate others. So, one such skill is the supportive communication. So, what is supportive communication? A person should be able to communicate in such a manner that the other people feel that this person is a very supportive person. So, the supportive nature of communication is very much important. The next skill that we need to effectively motivate others is the ability to influence others. Remember, when we are trying to influence another person, we have to always be careful and mindful not to create negative influences on them. Instead, we have to influence them in a positive manner so that they would produce the performance desired by us. Next, to motivate others, especially when one person is a leader or a manager, that person should be able to empower others. What do you mean by empowerment or empowering? That is the ability to delegate tasks, duties, and responsibilities to another person. So then we have to do it very carefully. We have to carefully understand the knowledge, the level of knowledge, skills, attitudes and experience of another person and read the other person very well and empower or delegate that person with work which they are capable of doing. Then only they will be motivated to perform the assigned task really well. If they are not motivated, if they will not be motivated to perform well if they are given tasks which they are not capable to do. And when you are delegating work, it is very important that you give the relevant authority also to them to make the relevant decisions. And also, they should be made responsible for the decisions that they make. At the same time, you should also remember that when you empower or delegate work along with the relevant authority, you can only delegate the responsibility and not the accountability. Accountability remains with you. And the next skill that you may require to effectively motivate others is self-awareness. What do we mean by self-awareness? That is, being aware about oneself. You should be aware about yourself. That is called self-awareness. Then you would know what motivates you and how can you motivate others. So, like this, you are expected to brainstorm and think of more and more overlapping and interrelated skills. Now we are going to look at the fifth characteristic of management skills. So, the fifth characteristic of management skills is that management skills are sometimes contradictory or paradoxical. Management skills are sometimes contradictory or contrasting to each other. So, therefore, sometimes some skills may be encouraging a person to be very kind and very humane. But at the same time, uh, the same skill may support the person to make a very methodical and a very tough, hard decision. Then that is what we mean by paradoxical as well. The co-management skills, like let's say communication skills, which is a very important and a very central management skill, is not always soft. It is sometimes soft and sometimes very hard when we write and prepare something like a show cause letter or a punishment letter. Whereas sometimes they are very hard, very kind and very soft. So are neither all soft and humanistic in orientation, no, all hard driving and directive. So when you take leadership, sometimes when you need to get the work done, you may have to drive hard, or you may have to encourage the people in a very tough manner, or you have to direct them as an authoritarian type leader. At another instance, the same leader will execute his or her leadership in a very soft and a very kind and a very helpful humanitarian manner. Now that we had been discussing the five main characteristics of management skills, so next we will look at the essential management skills. We have discussed about these in slide number 8 as well. Anyway, I am repeating the same thing because there are few more things to discuss under these essential management skills. So now we know what are management skills or managerial skills. These are essential for any successful manager. So without these, it is very difficult for you as management undergraduates or postgraduate students or working managers to succeed. Why do we say so? These are the skills and competencies that separate an a performer or an employee as an extraordinarily effective performer from the rest of the ordinary people. So out of ordinary undergraduates or postgraduate students or employees, if you want to be an outstanding employee, an outstanding student, or an effective performer, then you have to have these skills and competencies. They will separately identify you as an extraordinarily effective performer from the rest of your teammates. So this table 1 is an illustration that I have taken from the book Essential Management Skills, and it states that according to one study, these 10 skills have been identified as the skills of effective managers. So we will discuss them one by one once again. So the first and the most important skill is communication skills. I stated earlier also that communication skills can be divided into two main broad categories as verbal communication and non-verbal communication. So, communication is basically the exchange of ideas between people. So then this can happen either by using words or without using words. When we use words for communication and do that communication, we call it verbal communication. The opposite of that is non-verbal communication. That is communication that we demonstrate without using words, that is by using gestures, postures, colors, symbols, signs, or body language, dress codes, etc. So here we are focusing or emphasizing on verbal communication. That is communication using words, as I stated earlier. It can happen in any language: Sinhalese, Mandarin, English, Tamil, anything. And it includes 4 types of skills: written communication, spoken communication or speaking, writing, reading, and listening. Here they have specially mentioned that including listening. Why? Because listening is such an important skill. Let's start one by one. The first verbal communication skill is the written communication skill. That means you should be able to write properly and methodically. For that, you should know the language, the letters, the grammar, the punctuation, idioms, phrases, proverbs, etc. And also, you have to structure your writing very clearly. And the next one is speaking. So it's very important that you develop your spoken communication either in your native language Sinhala or in English. Next, it's very important that you are capable of reading. So Therefore, you should be able to read at least one page of any book or a newspaper a day. That gives you a wealth of information that will make you a very versatile person and a very knowledgeable person. Next comes the most important skill which our people rarely have, which is the listening skill. Though many people are good speakers, they are not very good listeners. So it's very important that we have very good listening skills. So it's very important to know that when we are listening to another person, we have to carefully listen to that person, paying our 100% attention to what that person is saying and what he or she is indicating through their body language and for what is being not stated. To do that, we have to listen very carefully or attentively. That's called active listening. The other one is passive listening, which means we are listening without paying serious attention to the other person. Even though we think that the other people will not understand or notice that we are not listening properly, of course, the others can notice that. So that makes them very frustrated and disappointed about you. So therefore, please make sure that you are an active listener. The most serious mistake that our people do in listening is that we listen to respond and not to understand. But actually, what we should be doing is listen to understand and not to respond. And once we understand very carefully what the other person is saying, next we can respond accordingly if necessary. And the second type of skill that we need to have is managing time. So it's very important that we manage our time very carefully. It's really good that you find and read the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen R. Covey for you to understand how to manage your time well. So actually, then you will understand that you are not managing time, but you are actually managing yourself. Then you will understand how to attend to your urgent work and important work. And next most important thing is to manage your stress. So as I mentioned when I was explaining slide number 8, stress is an inevitable part of our lives. And in the today's modern day life, stress is something really inevitable. So we should know how to manage stress, and then only we will be able to manage stress positively without allowing it to damage ourselves. Next comes our skill to manage our individual decisions. Decision making is a very important skill required from the managers. So to make decisions, we have to get information. So we have to collect data, analyze them carefully, process them, and then convert them to information, and based on them we will be making decisions. And always our decisions should be very objective. or that means they are evidence-based or data-driven. Without making subjective decisions or biased decisions, always make sure to make objective individual decisions. And as a manager, when we make a decision, we should realize that there is some amount of risk component associated with that decision. However, we have to take that decision and stand by our decision. Without putting the blame on other people, we have to stand by our decision. Something associated with decision making is your skill to recognize, define, and solve problems. We all know that similarly as stress, there are problems in our day-to-day personal lives as well as our work lives. So, we should be able to carefully recognize or understand the problems. When doing so, it's very important that we recognize the problems in advance and define them very carefully and see whether this is a problem that you can solve or not. So if there is a problem which you can solve, please take action immediately to solve that problem. Don't wait till the problem creates a serious problem. Try to solve it immediately. But if it is something beyond your control, don't stress yourself. Next, as we discussed in both slide number 8 and when we were discussing about the overlapping skills, you should be able to motivate and influence others. Especially when it comes to leadership, it's very important that you can make a positive influence on the lives of other people. And also, as we discussed about delegation twice before, I am not going to discuss about delegation here again. Then comes the skill of setting goals and articulating a vision. As I would explain to you in detail during the lesson on self-management and personal development, it's very important that you have a vision for your life, your own life. Similarly, we know that all the organizations will have a vision. So, if you are a leader or a chief executive officer or a founder of a business, it's very important that you are able to articulate or communicate that vision very clearly and carefully to the others. Next, you should be able to set goals for yourselves, your department, your team, and your organization. Goals drive ourselves. As an individual, you have to have a set of life goals related to different segments of your life. I will be explaining this in detail in the next lesson on self-management and personal development. And then you will be working towards these goals. Next comes self-awareness. It's very important that you try to become aware of yourself. For that, try to understand yourself by doing certain quizzes which are available in management magazines. And also make sure to do a SWOT analysis about yourself and understand what your strengths are and try to make them more and more stronger by sharpening your skills and try to capitalize on them. Next, when it comes to weaknesses, you should understand or realize your weaknesses very carefully and admit them. There is nobody on earth who does not have any weaknesses. And after that, you should learn how to overcome those weaknesses. Next comes your skill to build teams. As you do not work in isolation, it's very important that you develop your ability to work in a team and build the team for success. Then comes the next most inevitable thing, conflicts. It's very important that you learn how to manage conflicts. Managing conflicts or conflict management and negotiation skills are a very important skill that you need to have in your life to overcome the conflicts within your life and also which you enter into with other people. Now that we have been discussing about what are managerial skills and the examples for managerial skills as well as the characteristics for managerial skills, now I am going to tell you why you should learn all these things and also the rationale for including a subject called managerial skills development in your curriculum. Actually, why should you learn managerial skills? So we know what are managerial skills, and throughout this subject of managerial skills development, you are learning managerial skills and developing them within yourselves. So why should you do that? What is the reason or the rationale? There are several reasons. We'll discuss them one by one. The first one, to help improve personal management competencies. So, as individuals, we should improve ourselves. We should improve our competencies. So, we all know that as we discuss under the subject of quality management, it's very important to focus on continuous improvement of ourselves as well as our organizations. So, to help improve continuously what? Our competencies. So competencies include knowledge, skills, attitudes, and our experience or exposure. So then, on what are we developing our competencies? Personal management. Note that personal management is different from personnel management. You may have heard the word personnel management. Personnel management is an old term to refer to human resource management. But personnel management is managing ourselves, managing our own self. So, your learning of managerial skills is going to be beneficial
not only for you and your org, but also for your team as well as your organization. First, it helps to improve your personal management competencies related to things like managing your own stress and managing your own time. So, it will change your behavior, how you behave day to day in situations related to stress. Next, to foster productive, healthy, satisfying, and growth producing relationships with others in the work setting. So, the first reason is for your own benefit, and the second reason is for the benefit of yourself as well as for the others who are working with you together. The people who are working with you together are identified as colleagues. So, learning managerial skills fosters, encourages, or entertains productive relationships. So it's very important to develop productive or beneficial relationships with each other in the work setting. Because when you're working in an organization or in the work setting, you work in different departments and teams. And all those who work together with you may not be your friends, but they are your colleagues or sometimes peers. So whether you make friends with them or not, it's very important that you develop very strong and positive relationships with them. We will discuss in detail about the importance of these human relationships under the topic networking and social skills. So, when you develop relationships with others, it's very important that you make sure it's a productive relationship. So, a productive relationship enables you to get better outputs or beneficial for both parties as well as the overall organization. And also, it's very important to maintain healthy relationships. Healthy relationships are beneficial for all of us. So if the relationships are not healthy, they would be very stressful and a burden for us. So therefore, maintain healthy relationships with your colleagues so that they would not cause any harm for you. Next, satisfying. It's very important that you develop a satisfying relationship with your colleagues. When you develop relationships with your colleagues and you maintain them, there should be a satisfaction. It should not give you more stress. If there are stressful people in the work setting, you cannot avoid them. You can maintain a distant relationship with them. And also try to always make sure that your relationships produce some form of growth for you as well as for your colleagues. So it's very important that you develop growth producing relationships for yourselves, your colleagues, your team, and your organization. So these managerial skills will contribute for such beneficial relationships. Relevance of managerial skills is not limited just to an organization or work setting. They are applicable in most areas of your life with families, friends, volunteer organizations, and the community. So, when we are learning managerial skills, we are learning it in the university, in your undergraduate or postgraduate courses with the purpose of mainly applying them in your work setting or your organization while performing your job and or to expecting a promotion as a manager in the future. However, the relevance or the importance of these managerial skills are not limited just for your work setting or for your organizational setting. Once you learn and develop your managerial skills, you can apply them in all areas of your life. Managerial skills that we learn here are actually life skills. So they are applicable or you can apply them or they are relevant in most areas or aspects of your life, like in your family life. When there is a problem at home, you can motivate your parents, siblings, children, or husband or wife if you are good in motivating others. When a friend is facing a problem, you can help the friend to analyze the problem and make better decisions. If you're working in volunteer organizations, which is a really good thing, you can apply these skills to solve conflicts within that, or again to make decisions or to delegate work. Here it is very important that I must suggest you to work in volunteer organizations without expecting any benefit or any payment in return because they provide you several opportunities to develop your skills, to develop new relationships, and also they add a lot to your CV. And also when you're working in the community, when you have gone to a shop to buy your day-to-day groceries, or if you go to the hospital, or if you are in the petrol queue, then you will know how to deal with people. They may be very stressful experiences, but still you would know how to handle them because you learned stress management. Therefore, please note or remember that learning managerial skills are important for your personal life and also for the success of your organizational life and career because these managerial skills are very much associated or closely connected with the success of your personal life and your organizational careers. So now here I am presenting you another quick quiz question. This is a question that you can think and answer by yourself based on the discussion that we had so far. In the previous slide, we discussed that developing or rather learning managerial skills are beneficial for the individuals themselves as well as their organizations. So, when one learns or rather develops managerial skills, that person will become a competent person or rather a competent manager. So here what I am asking is, what are the organizational benefits? Here we are focusing not about the benefits for the individual or the person or the employee, but the organization of having competent managers or capable managers. Now that we had been discussing about the importance of managerial skills and the value or the benefit of learning managerial skills for individuals as well as organizations. Now, let's look at an approach to skill development. So, under this approach, we will study or learn or discuss how one can develop his or her own skills. So, before we discuss the steps in the approach, we will discuss about the background of skill development. So, we are going to develop or improve our managerial skills. That is the skill set that we discussed earlier and many more. So, this is a very complicated task. Of course, we discussed about this complicated nature of managerial skills under the characteristics of management skills. Similarly, the process of developing managerial skills is also very complex or complicated than developing skills associated with a particular trade. So, there are certain trades which are often performed by the blue-collar workers. For an example, welding or a mason bars or an electrician. So, for them to perform their trade successfully, they need to develop those skills associated with that trade. That is easy compared to developing managerial skills. It is the same with developing skills associated with a sport. It is the same with developing skills associated with a sport such as shooting baskets in basketball or in netball. Why is developing managerial skills so much complicated? It is because management skills are linked to a more complex knowledge base than other types of skills. Of course, management skills are connected or linked to a more complex knowledge base. You need to have an in-depth knowledge about these skills. Otherwise, one may ask, why do we need to have lectures for the subject managerial skills? Because you need to have the knowledge base or the knowledge foundation. It is very complex, and that is why management skills are linked to a more complex knowledge base than other types of skills associated with different trades such as welding, plumbing, electric wiring, or maybe learning sports. Management skills are also inherently connected to interaction with other individuals. Management skills are inherently or naturally connected to interaction. That means we need to interact with other individual people. And these other people are human beings, and as we all know, frequently or in most occasions, they are not predictable. Their behaviors are not predictable. So we cannot go with a pre-planned behavior or with a pre-planned set of skills. We have to adjust them accordingly then and there based on their responses. We are still continuing our discussion about skill development. So, we were in the process of discussing about an approach that we can use to develop our soft skills, or rather managerial skills. So another point that we have to keep in our minds is that a standardized approach to crafts like welding may be feasible, but no standardized approach is possible for managing human beings or people. So when it comes to certain technical activities like wiring, plumbing, or maybe masons, or constructing bridges, roads, etc., for them as well, we need something more than knowledge. In addition to the knowledge, they should have the hands-on experience. So then these jobs are very technical, and they also expect us to demonstrate the relevant technical skills. Things like welding is also the same. But the thing is, when it comes to those activities like performing technical skills, we can follow a particular standard approach. We can write down and teach the people this is the standardized or well accepted common approach to welding, and it will be applied by everybody everywhere in every organization, and maybe even across countries, so that it becomes a standard approach. It becomes a well accepted common approach for everybody everywhere. And when you follow that approach, that standard approach, that standardized equipment, it is possible to get the welding done. It is feasible or practically possible to do it that way. But to the contrary, it is not possible to follow such an approach with managing human beings. It is not possible to follow the same approach in managing people. So there is no particular standard common approach that each and every one of us can follow to manage human beings. So when we are working with people or working through people in organizations, we deal mainly with people, and especially those who are dealing with the function of human resource management have to extensively engage in working with people. So when we are working with people or managing human beings, it is not possible to follow a standardized approach or a common approach. We have to adjust according to their nature and also make slight changes in our approach. Next, must involve a heavy dose of practical application. So therefore, the art of managing people or managing human beings or working with people should be learned by practically you doing this work. So the studies or activities focusing on managerial skills development it's compulsory, it's a must to involve or include a heavy dose or a huge amount of practical application. So it's not sufficient that you learn these skills inside the classroom. Instead, you have to engage in practical using of these skills. So it must involve a heavy dose of practical application of those skills. Next comes developing competencies in managerial skills is tied to both conceptual learning and behavioral practice. So, therefore, developing these managerial skills or developing these competencies within yourself is tied, connected to both conceptual learning in one hand and on the other hand to behavioral practice. So if one needs to develop his or her competencies, that is knowledge, skills, attitudes and experience in managerial skills, you have to focus both not on one thing but on both conceptual learning and behavioral practice. What is conceptual learning? That is learning the concept and it involves mainly knowledge. So therefore, it's important that you sit in a classroom and learn these managerial skills related concepts and the associated knowledge. Then you will learn what is motivation, how can we define motivation, what is the importance of developing motivation, what are the motivation theories, what is time management, what are the advantages, disadvantages, etc. So that is what we call conceptual learning, and we do that inside the classroom, and it involves mainly the transfer of knowledge. And then comes behavioral practice. So that is where we practice what we learn in the classroom. That is, we practice or we practically apply the concepts that we learn. How? By demonstrating them through our behaviors. How we handle conflicts, how we handle stress, things like that. How we apply them. As we continue our discussion about an approach to skill development, we are looking at a learning model. So we are going to look at this learning model which consists of 4 steps. So this model presents us how one can learn managerial skills. What are the steps that need to be followed? So the first step out of the 4 steps is that the presentation of behavioral principles or action guidelines using traditional instruction methods. So, when it comes to learning a managerial skill, let's say communication, for an example, the first step under this learning model is to present or teach or share the behavioral principles or action guidelines. That means the person who is teaching, the teacher, the lecturer, or the instructor, or the trainer should present or share the principles or the basic guidelines related to using that skill. So we refer to them as behavioral principles. For an example, how you should behave in front of an audience when you are delivering a presentation, or the action that you need to take, the guidelines, such as how you should write an email. So, this presentation is done using our traditional methods, approaches, or strategies of giving instructions, like by reading a book, by going through a handout, or by attending a lecture or listening to a video recording. Then the second step of the learning model is the instructor or the lecturer or the teacher should demonstrate the principles taught earlier by means of cases, films, scripts, or incidents. The instructor must now demonstrate or show the principles. Which principles? The behavioral principles. The principles that one should follow in demonstrating a particular behavior. Let's say delivering a presentation. How? By means or methods of cases, films, scripts, or incidents. So we can give you a case study to go through and answer, or read a case study and see how one has applied the behavioral principles or action guidelines, or we can show you a film like the Mandela's Walk to Freedom, or probably maybe the film Invictus, something like that. Or we can give you a script on how you can act accordingly, or show you an incident through a video. And then the next step is, once you learn the behavioral principles or action guidelines and see how they have applied them, how others have applied them, next it's an opportunity for you to practice those principles. So next, the instructor should provide the learners an opportunity to practice those principles. or apply those principles taught earlier. How? By asking you to do a role play on how you would handle a stressful situation, or giving you an exercise related to answering a case study. Something like that. Feedback on performance from peers, instructors, or experts. Once you practice or apply those principles using the given opportunity, in the final step, the instructor or the lecturer should give feedback, provide feedback to the participants on their performance. This feedback can be taken from peers. Who are peers? People who are in the same level as you, or instructors, your lecturers, or experts in the relevant field. So now we have come to the last steps of our discussion about identifying an approach that we can use, and we can use once you get into your organizations as well, for skill development. So I have explained that model for skill development in a brief 4-step process. So we will look at the same thing using some information and examples taken from a textbook. So in that textbook, they have presented a model for developing management skills in the format of a table. So here they are presenting it under 3 columns in the table. In the first column, they have listed out the component or the step in the management skills development process. And how we can do that has been explained under contents. And in the third column, they explain the objectives of each component. So, according to this model, the first step to developing one's skills, let's say decision-making skills, or communication skills, or problem-solving skills, is by assessing the skills. So, the first step is skill assessment. That is, assessing or evaluating the current level of skills. So first we have to assess, measure, or evaluate the current level of skills of the person. Next, how can you do that? You can use a survey instrument to measure the level of skills or assess the level of skills. So you can use a questionnaire or a survey. There are a lot of well accepted, standard, validated surveys available on the internet, free of charge as well as with a payment, which we can use to assess our own level of skills or the level of skills of others related to a particular skill. And then based on that, we can get an assessment of the current level of skills. And then what we will do next is the performance of a role play. So, by giving the participants an opportunity to engage in a role play, we will be able to assess the current level of skills. So, what are the objectives of this skill assessment? Assess current level of skill, competency and knowledge. So, during this skill assessment stage, where we will use a survey instrument, we are going to assess, evaluate or measure the current level of skill competency related to a particular skill. Let's say conflict management or negotiation skills, and also the knowledge related to that skill. For an example, the amount of knowledge within that person related to a particular skill. So, by doing this assessment, we are getting the participant to know or understand his or her current level of skill, competency and knowledge related to a particular skill, and also create within that person's mind the readiness, the preparedness to change to the higher level of skill. So, based on the assessment, we can decide how much teaching should we give or how much knowledge should we provide this person regarding this particular skill. So that is why we are using skill learning. So under the component of skill learning, what we do is we are encouraging that person to learn that skill. How? By going through a textbook, a written textbook about developing presentations, or by giving them a newspaper or a magazine article to read, or giving them a handout like what we give at the lectures, and also by providing behavioral guidelines. What are behavioral guidelines? They are guidelines or instructions that we provide regarding how one should behave when they are performing that skill. So that is a behavioral guideline. So in most cases, this happens through classroom instruction. Teach correct principles and present a rationale for behavioral guidelines. So, the objective of this stage is to teach the correct principles, how to take the start, how to deliver the body of the presentation, how to do the ending of the presentation properly, and how to answer questions like that, to teach, guide, or instruct on the correct principles or guidelines regarding performing that skill, and also present a rationale for those behavioral guidelines. Why have these behavioral guidelines mentioned? Whether there is a reason or a rationale behind that. What is the reason for each guideline, like that. Next, we have to get the person to analyze that skill. That means we provide the person with a case study, a case, where either they will read it out and learn a lesson or understand something, or else they analyze that skill, that case by applying that skill and see how certain problems can be sorted out using that skill. Provide examples of appropriate and inappropriate skill performance. The best thing is to show real life case studies, examples through videos or maybe through written text, which provides or shows examples of appropriate skill performance. How a particular person has delivered a presentation or a public speech in an appropriate manner, or how a particular person has failed or become unsuccessful in delivering a public speech in an inappropriate manner or in an unsuitable manner. Analyze behavioral principles and reasons they work. And then when you are dealing with such case studies, it is important, without simply just watching the case study video or write-up and keeping it aside, we have to analyze those cases by studying the behavioral principles or the behavior related to the skill and reasons why certain behavioral guidelines were successful and why certain guidelines which have not been followed and how it created negative results. Next, the fourth step is to give the chance to the person to practice those skills or practically apply those skills, but not in a real life situation, but in an artificially created, manipulated situation, where you give an exercise to a person and ask that person to handle that situation, or we give a simulation exercise, or ask the person to perform a role play on how you handle a particular given hypothetical scenario. So based on how the people act in the role play, we can understand whether the person has understood the principles related to that skill correctly. Practice behavioral guidelines. So once we teach or train those skills, it's very important that we create the platform or give the guidelines to practice those skills in the real life. So then, first you should practice those behavioral guidelines in a hypothetical situation and see how the principles which were stated related to the skill can be adapted or modified or adjusted to suit our own personal, unique styles of work and behavior. So then we have to get feedback or give feedback to the people regarding how they are applying those skills. So the person who is learning here should also be always ready and welcome to receive feedback, to get the feedback necessary and assistance, the relevant assistance. So then you should get the assistance or the support from other people regarding how you practiced that skill. Then finally, you can move on to the stage of skill application. What do you mean by skill application? That is, applying that particular skill which you learned to the practical life. So skill application, which can be done through an assignment like the community-based projects. They can be either as written assignments like written report submissions, or they can be behavioral type assignments where you are expected to demonstrate certain types of behaviors. So here the objective is that the student or the participant in the skill development program is capable of transferring or shifting what we learned in the classroom learning, which was done during the skill learning stage, to real life situations. So through this, we foster, encourage, or motivate continuous personal development of a person. If you have any questions regarding this lesson, please contact me. Thank you very much for your listening. If there are any questions, once again, I request you to contact me.